The AT Habitat has to be one of the most unique truck bed tents or campers that are available. I've been running mine for 6 months now, and I figured it's time to talk about it. All the pros, the cons, as well as compare it to some of the competitors, including the Alucab that I just spent 2 weeks camping out of. Some quick stats on the Habitat. The total weight before any options is 340 pounds. The tent is made from a cotton and poly canvas. The total length of it is 15 feet long when opened. It has 7 feet of headroom in the living area, and the sleeping area can support up to 600 pounds. I initially ordered my Habitat in July 2022 from Oregon AT in Bend, and finally took delivery and had it installed in February 2023. I'm going to show you the pricing breakdown and all of the options for my order, but keep in mind that the pricing has changed since I placed it. If you want to see all of the pricing and options as they are available now, I recommend checking out the Oregon AT website, which I'll put a link to in the description because it's actually better than the AT Overland's website. The base price of a Habitat on a 5.5 foot bed on a full-size truck when I bought it was $12,000. And for that, you get a fully functioning tent that's ready to use. You have the mattress, you have the lights, you got a 12-volt and USB outlets. Installation adds $550 to the cost and takes about half a day. The first option I added on mine was the $2,500 Truma heater, which is a propane heat exchanger. It works in a similar way to the diesel and gasoline heaters, but is much cleaner, doesn't smell at all, needs less maintenance, and seems to work well at altitude, unlike the diesel heaters. It is a lot of money, but the whole point of getting the Habitat was to make it easier for me to stay out and shoot videos more, including in the middle of winter. The Truma heater pumps out a ton of heat, even for that large living area in the Habitat, but you will want some sort of ducting or an elbow to direct the heat up into the sleeping area for the really cold nights. My coldest night in the Habitat was negative 22 degrees Celsius or negative 8 Fahrenheit, and I was pretty comfortable. Unfortunately, it is loud and it makes a loud click when it reaches the temperature set on the thermostat and will switch from either the max heat down to the low heat or when it switches on and off. According to Truma's technical specs, the heater uses about half a pound of propane an hour on max heat, and about 0.2 of a pound per hour on the lowest heat setting. On the passenger side of my Habitat is the $700 hatch, which gives access to the side of my bed or the inside of my bed. My original plan was to add a shower inside and drop it out of that hatch, but now I'm thinking about building a cabinet into the inside of my truck and using that to store my recovery equipment for easy access. If you're wanting a window to put in there for ventilation, the Euro style is actually a great alternative since it has the bug mesh and it has the light blocking blinds built into it. On top, I added the Rhino Rack track, and I went with Rhino Rack because I thought it would give me a ton of options for roof accessories, but I actually think that the L track is a better option, and I wish that I've gone with that because I see a lot more things that work with L track. Finally, there is the destination charge, which is the shipping from Arizona, where the AT Habitat is built, to Oregon. If you order directly from AT Overland and pick it up in Prescott, Arizona, you do not have to pay the shipping, but you do have to pay an 8.35% tax rate. And if you're adding any options at all, the tax ends up being more than shipping because you don't pay tax in Oregon. What sets the Habitat apart from almost all of the other truck bed campers, except for maybe the skinny guy camper, is the way that it opens up and hinges over backwards, giving you a separate living space in the truck bed and then a sleeping area on the overhang. This gives you a lot more space than a simple pop-up camper like an Alucab or Super Pacific, Go Fast Camper, that Project M, all of those things which share that living space with the sleeping space or have the living space underneath the sleeping space. The Habitat is really nice for my family of 3 since we can all hang out comfortably in it if the weather is gross or if the mosquitoes are bad. All 3 of us will fit in the sleeping area so we can lay on the bed on the mattress, or one of us can stand up and cook in the living space while the others hang out on the sleeping space. All this room means you could also technically sleep up to 6 people in the Habitat. You'd have 2 in the sleeping space, 2 in the truck bed, and then 2 more on the optional platforms that go above the truck bed, which would be really, really cozy. Ideally, you probably want to sleep 3 or 4 people in there max. Even without 6, the sleeping arrangements are cozy. My son is fine since he's by himself up front on the overhang, but with myself and my wife, with 2 people side by side on the mattress, it is very close because that mattress is only 48 inches wide, and that is 6 inches narrower than a full-size bed. It is okay, and I'm not a snuggler, but it is okay since you can comfortably sleep close to the edge of the mattress. You can't do that on a normal bed because if you do that, you'll fall off the edge. But you don't have to worry about it in a tent because you are up against the side of the tent. You're not falling out of it. That being said, it is still 2 inches less than the width of the Go Fast camper. It's 4 inches less than the Super Pacific and 5 inches less than the Alucab. And having spent a couple of weeks in that Alucab, I can tell you that that is a noticeable difference. And while we're on the subject of the mattress, it is really thick, but it's also somehow really, really firm. 10 years ago, I would have been fine, but I almost immediately switched it out for the inflatable mattress from Go Fast Campers. It's the one that's designed for their super light tents, and it's a perfect fit and is far more comfortable. That inflatable mattress also allows me to leave my bedding on there. I have my 2 iCamper sleeping bags. I got a king-sized heated blanket and a king-size wool blanket. And normally you wouldn't be able to, but by deflating that mattress, I can make them fit. I do have to add a cargo mesh over the top of everything. I've secured it with hooks that I've tapped into the outside of that mattress so that when I flip the tent shut, it holds everything in place. The camper is accessed through the tailgate with a locking top hatch that keeps everything inside secure. So I've got my locking tailgate and then the top of it is locked as well. And it is easy to access because all I have to do is open up the tailgate. So I unlock the tailgate and open that. And then with that open, I can reach inside the habitat and release the latches for the top from the inside. On mine, I have added the magnetic bug mesh from Oregon AT, which was a lifesaver in the Pacific Northwest because we're able to get in and out without the mosquitoes also getting in and out. And other than the other AT Overland products, the only other topper I've seen that has a bug mesh available is the Alucab. Climbing in through the tailgate is definitely a little bit awkward since you have to get up on that tailgate, and that means that I have to carry a stepladder for my wife. It is made a little bit more difficult in mine by the SHW off-road drawer system, and there's no way I'm giving that up though, since it is great storage, so I just have to deal with it. Unfortunately, since it retains the vehicle's tailgate, it also retains all of those gaps that are around the outside of the tailgate, and even with a ton of weather stripping, dust still gets in. It's one of the things that I like least about the Habitat, but it is also a problem that is shared by all of those other camper toppers that have a tailgate. So things like the Go Fast camper, the Super Pacific, the Project M, that's something you have to deal with all of those as well. This is one of the places where I much prefer the Alucab design since that removes the tailgate. It makes entry so much easier. It's got those built-in door seals which work really well, and that prevents the dust from getting in. The tent material itself is a light gray canvas. It sheds the water in rain and prevents condensation from building up inside. Although I did notice that it has gotten slightly damp inside when I put it up soaking wet. So we spent several days in the Pacific Northwest and we're closing it up wet every day, every morning, and in the evenings when I open up again, it was slightly damp inside. The pale tent material color does help reduce the heat inside a little bit, as do the 8 windows that you can open up for ventilation, and that is something that the Habitat is amazing for. There's so much ventilation around the inside. But unfortunately, that light gray tent canvas also lets in a lot of light, which can make sleeping in it pretty difficult without an eye mask. I am used to the dark iCamper canvas, which blocked almost all of the light. And with the Habitat, I find myself waking up pretty early, basically as soon as the sun comes up. And that's made worse by the 2 plastic windows on either side that line up perfectly with your face where you sleep. So that means as soon as the sun rises, it's shining straight in through those clear plastic windows. With the exception of the yellow Go Fast camper, I think the Habitat is the worst of all of them at blocking sunlight, and the Alucab is by far the best. Inside, you get multiple storage pockets around the inside of the tent, and you also have a mesh that's above the sleeping area that's great for leaving clothing in during the night, but unfortunately you can't leave anything in it while folding the camper up. You also get one panel as standard, which can be used to extend the front sleeping platform for a child, or you can move it around and use it as a table. You do have the option of switching that panel out for one of the longer panels that gives you additional sleeping areas. The camper itself is made of an aluminum covered honeycomb, which can be drilled all the way through to put additional storage on, whether it's inside or outside, although you do have to be careful with the load since that aluminum skin is fairly thin. The inside of it is covered in carpet, which obviously gives you great space for all your patches because we know how important those are. But it's also great for Velcro storage bags. And I got a bunch of the Oregon AT cell, and we've been loading those up with diapers and other small things that we're going to want to get to while we're inside the habitat or while we're in there at night. Since the habitat looks like a giant sail, I've had people ask how it does in the wind. Thankfully, it is pretty solid. There is some flapping of the window awnings, and because the zippers that are on the windows themselves are not covered, they tend to rattle around in the wind too. But the tent itself holds up great. In fact, the biggest problem you're going to have is the entire truck shaking when there are really strong gusts of wind, since it is such a huge surface area. Now let's talk about the setup and teardown. The habitat is the most spacious of all of those slide-in or mount-on truck bed campers, but it's also the most complicated. The setup is quick and simple. You just release the latches on both sides of the truck, attach the two supporting poles together, and use them to push the habitat open. Once deployed, you separate the two supporting poles and attach them to either side of the habitat to support the bed. This will be very difficult if you're not tall enough to reach the sleeping area when it's deployed. The final step with the tent is to pull down any extra fabric and pop it into place on the sides. You then secure the window awnings so they don't flap around quite as much. Of course, I then still have to inflate my mattress on my setup, or if you have the stock mattress, you then have to set all of your bedding out. Compared to a fold-out rooftop tent like the iCamper, setup is about the same. Compared to other truck bed campers, it's more involved. The Alucab, the Super Pacific, and the Go Fast camper all just need a couple of latches opened and a good push, and only the Skinny Guy takes more work. Packing away again takes a little longer. The process is reversed, but you have to go back and forth a couple of times, tucking the fabric into the tent before you can fully close and latch the top. I've timed myself, and I took just under 3.5 minutes to pack the whole thing away. Of all the campers I've seen and used, the Alucab, once again, is my favorite for setting up and packing away. While it's just as simple as the other clamshell style campers to pack away, it's where you just pull it down and latch it shut, it's the only one that you can leave all of your bedding in exactly the way it is. Even your pillows can stay up there. Another advantage that the Alucab has over the AT toppers is the huge aftermarket support. There are tons of accessories that you can get from companies like Alucab themselves, GP Factor, or even 813 Fab. But that being said, the AT toppers do retain the truck bed, so you can use any truck bed accessories in it that you want, and you don't need something that's specialized. And that's how I'm able to keep my drawer system in there. Unfortunately, finding an awning that works with the habitat is not easy, and I miss having my 270 awning. I wish I could have that rugged bound awning that's on my Jeep and put it on the habitat. The placement of the gas struts and the way that you have to tuck material in mean that an awning would just get in the way. A simple straight out awning or maybe a 180-degree awning might work with brackets in the right place, but it would definitely still make packing the habitat away very difficult. I've had people ask why I chose the habitat over any other model, and it essentially comes down to the living space, and that's pretty much it. It has the most room of any truck bed camper, and for me, that was the most important thing. Other options like the Go Fast camper, the AT Atlas, AT Summit, and the Super Pacific are all great options, ranging from light and bare bones to more substantial with features and accessories, but they all lack that living space that I like. The Skinny Guy is probably the closest competitor to the habitat in terms of the living space. They sit in the truck bed as a self-contained camper and have a space underneath that I could still fit an SHW off-road drawer system. And because they're self-contained, they come off the truck really easily with the included jack stands, which is great if you want to use your truck as a truck occasionally. So I really like them. They're really well thought out. Like the Habitat, they fold out off the back, but unlike the Habitat, they have a ton of accessories built in. It's basically like a RV that's kind of compressed down into one tiny little thing. So they have things like power, shower, water tank, toilet, even a kitchen sink built in. So they're really, really well thought out, but they're also kind of expensive. If you want to learn more about them and what they come with, we actually have them on revereoverland.com, or you can just call Commonwealth 4x4 here in Kentucky. And if you tell them that Revere Overland sent you, then you can get $100 off the basic install. One downside to this skinny guy is there's not a lot of storage in them, and you either have to open them up to get to your fridge, or you have to keep your fridge in the back seat of the truck. And for me, I didn't want the extra complexity when setting up, and I didn't want to have to keep all of my clothing and my fridge in the back seat of the truck. I wanted that available for everything else, including all the camera gear that I take with me. And I'm sure there are other options worth looking into, including the Project M from 4-Wheel Campers, but I don't know enough about them to make a good argument for or against them. I simply didn't choose them because they didn't have the space that I wanted. And that leaves one more option, and it's one that I've mentioned several times in this video, and you can probably tell that I like it. And that is the Alucab. While it also lacks the space of the Habitat, it has a lot of other advantages that make up for it, to the point where I actually like them both just as much. I love how quick and easy the Alucab is to set up. It's comfortable. You can leave all of your bedding in there without even having to make the bed in the morning. You can just pile it up however you want. It's dust-free, it's dark, it's extremely well ventilated with those pop-up side panels. You can easily heat the top and the bottom thanks to that little hatch that opens up, and there are a ton of accessories that are available for it. The downside is that it is huge and a little bit heavier, and that creates a lot more drag and is going to lower your fuel consumption a little bit. On the Tundra that I rented, it had 35s with the Alucab, and it got worse gas mileage than my Tundra does with 37s and the AT Habitat. But if it was just me and my wife, I almost certainly would have gone for the Alucab. In fact, even now, having spent a couple of weeks in the Alucab, I really like it. And I feel like if I could sell my Habitat for more than it would cost me to get the Alucab, I'd probably do it. I would just have a really, really hard time giving up all that space that the Habitat has. If you want to learn more about the Alucab, we also have them on revereoverland.com, where you can start that ordering process from Commonwealth, or you can just call Commonwealth directly, and just like the skinny guy, you can get $100 off the install if you tell them that Revere Overland sent you. Ultimately, the choice of topper comes down to what is most important to you. Some people are going to want something that's light and simple, so they're going to go with the Go Fast camper. Others might want a home away from home, so may end up going with a fully kitted out Alucab or a skinny guy camper. If having the most space possible is your main priority, then the Habitat is obviously for you. It's an easy choice. If you want to see the Habitat or the Alucab in action, definitely subscribe to the channel to see these upcoming videos. There are a bunch where we've used the Habitat extensively all across the US, and we've got the one where I rented that Tundra with the Alucab from Alaska Overlander on our Alaska trip that's coming up at some point. Subscribing to the channel also helps me with my goal of reaching 100,000 subscribers by the end of the year. Thanks for watching.